The first light of dawn struggled to penetrate the dense fog that enveloped Hang-Ah Alley, casting an eerie pall over the narrow passageway. The distant hum of the city was muted here, replaced by the unsettling silence that hung in the air. The scene was grim. A body lay crumpled against the cold, unforgiving pavement. Nancy Chavez, known to those who frequented this part of San Francisco, had met a tragic end. Detective Mark Leland arrived at the scene, his breath visible in the chilly air as he ducked beneath the yellow tape strung up by early responders. The alley was a chaotic mess of discarded refuse and shadows, but his eyes were drawn immediately to Nancy's lifeless form. He noted the bruises and abrasions, evidence of a brutal encounter. Nearby, a forensic technician captured photographs, each click of the camera punctuating the silence. Limited CCTV, Officer Jenna Brooks muttered as she joined Leland. Most cameras are pointed away from here. Leland frowned. And witnesses? None so far, Brooks replied grimly. The absence of surveillance footage and eyewitnesses was a significant hurdle. Yet, as Leland examined Nancy's body more closely, he recognized patterns, marks and injuries that echoed other unsolved cases in the area. This was no random act of violence. It bore the hallmarks of something sinister and familiar. "Let's get DNA samples," Leland instructed, gesturing to a nearby technician. It was a long shot, but one they couldn't afford to ignore. As they gathered evidence from the scene, each piece meticulously cataloged and stored, Leland's mind raced with possibilities. Who could have done this to Nancy? And were they still out there? The investigation shifted to San Francisco General Hospital, where the sterile white walls of the morgue awaited them. Under harsh fluorescent lights, Dr. Elaine Tran worked methodically over Nancy's body. Her findings were unsettling yet crucial. "Cause of death, strangulation," Dr. Tran confirmed, her voice echoing slightly in the cold room. "Ligature marks are consistent with a foreign object, likely something improvised." Leland nodded, jotting down notes even as he processed this grim confirmation. "Any idea on time of death?" Dr. Tran shook her head slowly. "The cold weather has preserved the body too well for an accurate estimate." This complication added another layer to their challenge. Without a precise timeline, narrowing down suspects would be difficult. But they had something. The DNA samples prepared by Tran's team were their best hope for a lead. Returning to headquarters, Leland and Brooks dove into Nancy Chavez's life, a task complicated by her transient existence. Sparse records and scant digital footprints made piecing together her past like finding scattered shards of glass and sand. "She was seen last night," Brooks mentioned as they sifted through interviews with locals who knew Nancy. Leland looked up from his notes. "Seen with whom?" "An argument," Brooks clarified, skimming through her own notes. "With an unknown male, according to one witness at least." This revelation added urgency to their search. Determined to find this mysterious figure, Leland instructed his team to comb through shelter logs and reach out to community contacts who might provide leads on this man's identity. But as they dug deeper into Nancy's connections, an uncanny chill crept into the room, a feeling that this case was more complex than it appeared on paper. Just as they thought they were reaching a dead end for the day, a call came in that sent shivers down Leland's spine. Another body had been found in an alley not far from where Nancy had been discovered. As Detective Mark Leland absorbed the chilling news of another body found, an unsettling urgency surged through him. The morning air was brisk as he and Officer Jenna Brooks made their way to the area homeless shelters, hoping to uncover more about Nancy Chavez's last night alive. This time, they needed answers. Inside the shelter, the atmosphere was a mix of warmth and weary eyes. As Leland and Brooks approached potential witnesses, they were met with a mix of reluctance and eagerness to help. Each story was different, a kaleidoscope of partial truths and blurred memories. One man claimed he saw Nancy arguing with a tall figure whose face was shrouded in shadow. Another insisted she had been with a shorter, stockier individual, while yet another swore he had seen her alone. The descriptions of the unknown male fluctuated like smoke in the wind, leaving Leland frustrated and no closer to a clear suspect. Yet amidst the confusion, one detail stood out, A witness mentioned spotting an unusual vehicle parked near Hanga Alley on the night Nancy was killed. It was a dark sedan, they recalled, with out-of-state plates. This nugget of information ignited a spark of hope in Leland's mind. With this lead in hand, Leland and Brooks transitioned from interviewing witnesses to tracing vehicle registrations. Back at headquarters, they sifted through databases, seeking any connection between the sedan and known associates of Nancy or potential suspects in the area. The next stop was the San Francisco Crime Lab. Inside its sterile walls, scientists worked diligently over evidence from Nancy's case. Early DNA tests were frustratingly inconclusive. Technology back then simply couldn't offer what modern advancements could. Still, each piece of evidence was crucial. As they examined items collected from the crime scene, Brooks discovered something intriguing on one of Nancy's garments, a foreign fiber not consistent with anything she owned. This suggested another presence at the scene, possibly even her killer's. Yet as promising as this clue was, it wasn't enough to pinpoint a suspect without further context. The fiber was carefully cataloged and filed into cold storage, joining countless other pieces waiting for a breakthrough that might never come. Returning to the cold case unit with heavy hearts, Leland and Brooks gathered their findings to review the case file in detail. The lack of concrete evidence forced them into an uncomfortable conclusion. The case had to be classified as cold. Frustration gnawed at Leland as he stared at the whiteboard filled with notes and timelines. "We're missing something," he muttered under his breath. Brooks nodded in agreement but offered little comfort. "There's always a chance technology will catch up," she suggested half-heartedly as they archived files for future re-examination. Reviewing similar crimes in the region revealed unsettling patterns. This wasn't an isolated incident, but potentially part of a serial trend that had slipped under their radar for too long. As daylight faded into twilight outside their windows, Leland felt an eerie sense of unfinished business hanging over him like a specter. Just as he resolved to leave for the day, his phone buzzed insistently on his desk. The call was brief, but enough to send his heart racing. A new development had surfaced elsewhere that demanded immediate attention. Leaving no time for hesitation, he grabbed his coat and rushed out into the dimming San Francisco streets. Whatever awaited him next promised only more shadows and unanswered questions. The phone call pulled Detective Mark Leland from his office in Chapter 2, led him directly to the SF Homicide Cold Case Unit. In the precinct, the atmosphere was tense with anticipation. Officers clustered around a conference table covered with files, each one a testament to lives lost and mysteries unsolved. "We have a chance at big," Officer Jenna Brooks announced as Leland joined them. Advanced DNA technology could finally unlock these cold cases, including Nancy Chavez's. Leland nodded, aware of this opportunity. "We need to prioritize," he said while glancing over the case files. Resource constraints meant they couldn't pursue every lead. Decisions had to be made. As they sorted through cases, a forensic analyst entered. "We've identified an anomalous DNA profile," she reported. "This profile wasn't previously detected in Nancy's case." Leland exchanged a glance with Brooks. "This could be our break," he said, hope kindling in his chest. "Let's see if it matches anything in the national database." The team moved swiftly to the CODIS National Database Facility, their mission clear. Search for matches to this newfound DNA signature. The sterile environment buzzed with activity as analysts scanned screens and cross-referenced data. "We have multiple close matches," one technician called out after hours of searching, "but they're scattered across states: California, Colorado, Utah." Brooks leaned over the screen, focusing on a name that appeared frequently: Ricky Dolan. Known for a series of assault homicides, Dolan's profile closely mirrored their suspect's MO. Could he be connected to Nancy's case? Brooks wondered aloud. Leland rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "This might explain why we couldn't find leads before," he mused. "Let's compare patterns in these cold cases and see if they line up with Dolan's timeline." Back at the cold case unit in San Francisco, they sifted through timelines and victim profiles from various states. The process was painstaking, Discrepancies in victim profiles and timeline inconsistencies added layers of complexity. Then, amidst the chaos of data, a breakthrough emerged. Geographic analysis showed Dolan was in San Francisco around the time of Nancy's murder. The pieces were beginning to fit together. It's not a coincidence, Leland concluded as he highlighted Dolan's presence on a map overlaying crime scenes. Yet even as they celebrated this discovery, new questions arose. Had Dolan been operating alone? Were there others involved? Determined to trace Dolan's movements further, Leland picked up the phone to initiate contact with out-of-state law enforcement agencies. Coordinating their efforts could be key to building a comprehensive case against Dolan. Just as Leland began dialing, Brooks interrupted him with another revelation. A recent report suggests Dolan might have returned to California under an alias, she said breathlessly. Leland froze mid-dial. This changed everything. If Dolan was back in California, it posed an immediate threat. Suddenly, the phone rang again, a sharp intrusion breaking their concentration. On the other end was an officer from Denver with disturbing news. Evidence had emerged linking Dolan to yet another unsolved murder there. Leland's heart pounded as he listened. Each word intensified his resolve and dread alike. They were on the cusp of unraveling something much larger than anticipated. A network of crimes spanning years and states, threatening more lives even now. As he hung up the call, urgency gripped him anew. He turned to his team. We need all available resources on this now. Track every movement, every connection. The stakes were higher than ever before. The chilling realization hit him. Their quarry was elusive, but not invincible. Justice demanded persistence and precision. And as darkness settled outside once more, Leland knew they stood at the precipice of uncovering a truth that could reshape everything they thought they knew about Ricky Dolan, and perhaps even save lives before it was too late. Detective Mark Leland's mind raced as he hung up the phone with Denver. The news that Ricky Dolan might be back in California under an alias fueled a fresh urgency. The precinct buzzed with the same intensity, officers moving purposefully as they coordinated efforts across states. Leland knew they needed a comprehensive profile on Dolan to understand his patterns. At the Cold Case Unit office, Leland and Officer Jenna Brooks dove into Dolan's background check. Dolan's sparse online footprint was a challenge, but persistence was key. His past was a convoluted tapestry of aliases and movements, often vanishing just as quickly as he appeared. Yet one document stood out. A discharge paper from a nearby hospital dated the day before Nancy Chavez's murder. It detailed a mental health treatment, suggesting Dolan might have been in a volatile state. We need to cross-reference this with his movements in other cases, Leland instructed, noting the hospital's location could place Dolan near Nancy at the time of her death. As they connected dots between hospital records and crime scenes, threads of opportunity began to weave a clearer picture. The task then shifted to coordinating with Denver authorities via a tense multi-state law enforcement call. Legal procedures were in motion for Dolan's extradition, but concurrent maneuvers in Denver threatened delays. A Denver officer confirmed Dolan's confession to an unsolved murder eerily similar to Nancy's case. This revelation tied their hands further into cooperation. We need to plan a timed collaboration, Brooks urged, her voice steady despite the chaos. If we synchronize our efforts, we can ensure his transfer without interference. As plans solidified over crackling phone lines, the detectives returned to the task of consolidating witness statements related to Dolan's past activities. The Homicide Unit office became a hub of urgency as they sifted through testimonies and deposition records. Yet, mismanagement had scattered crucial documents. Frustration mounted as missing files complicated their timeline analysis until one detective unearthed a stack of overlooked records. These revealed discrepancies in Dolan's alibis during several past incidents, further incriminating him. This paints a damning picture, Brooks commented, highlighting inconsistencies that pointed towards deliberate deception on Dolan's part. With this new evidence, investigators filed updated findings to expand the scope of their inquiry into what now seemed like an intricate web of crimes, potentially involving more than just isolated incidents. But just as the picture began to sharpen, another call interrupted their momentum. A series of burglaries had been reported near Hang-Ah Alley, each bearing uncanny similarities to past cases linked to Dolan. Leland felt the familiar chill of unresolved tension creeping back. These new reports suggested that someone might be mimicking or continuing Dolan's sinister legacy while he awaited extradition. As darkness fell over San Francisco once again, Leland stood by the precinct windows, watching rain streak down like tears against glass, each drop a reminder of time slipping away. Determined to prevent further tragedy, he turned to his team with resolve in his eyes. We have to move fast. Someone out there is trying to keep this nightmare alive. The weight of urgency pressed against him as he prepared for what lay ahead, knowing full well that every moment counted in their race against time. Detective Mark Leland stood amidst the organized chaos of the SF Police Department's Extradition Coordination Office. His mind was a whirlwind of thoughts as he recalled the ominous burglaries near Hang-Ah Alley. The pressure to finalize Ricky Dolan's extradition paperwork was palpable, with legal hurdles emerging at every step. New charges from Denver compounded the urgency, threatening to derail the entire process. Leland exchanged tense glances with Officer Jenna Brooks as they coordinated a call with Denver authorities. The clock ticked ominously, each second precious as they confirmed Dolan's trial schedule. It granted them a narrow window for extradition, a sliver of time to prepare their case. "We need to get these files to the prosecutors," Brooks insisted, urgency coloring her voice. With compiled evidence in hand, Leland delivered the documents to San Francisco's legal team, setting in motion the intricate dance of legal negotiations. The precinct then shifted focus to public relations as they prepared for a press conference. In the sterile setting of the police press conference room, Leland felt the weight of expectation from both colleagues and the public. They needed to announce the reopening and progress in Nancy Chavez's case without exposing sensitive details that could compromise future proceedings. As Leland stepped up to the podium, cameras flashed and murmurs filled the room. "Today, we reaffirm our commitment to seeking justice for Nancy Chavez," he declared. The announcement stirred interest among attendees and soon yielded anonymous tips linking Dolan to other unsolved local cases, an unexpected boon that demanded immediate attention. Back at headquarters, Leland and Brooks sifted through these new leads, realizing they had entered another investigative phase that could potentially expand Dolan's criminal network. "We'll need teams out there immediately," Leland directed, feeling the weight of new responsibilities. The final hours before Dolan's extradition were spent at the SF Crime Lab, where every piece of evidence was scrutinized under advanced technology. Tension simmered as analysts worked tirelessly to reanalyze all findings before trial. The discovery of a misplaced file threatened their momentum until it was recovered by a sharp-eyed technician. Leland examined its contents, an overlooked piece of evidence that directly tied Dolan's MO to Nancy's murder. "This changes everything," Brooks whispered in awe as they realized its significance. As evidence was consolidated, they crafted a narrative for presentation at Dolan's upcoming trial. The stakes had never been higher, each detail meticulously prepared to withstand scrutiny. With preparations complete, Leland took a moment by himself outside the precinct. The evening air was cool against his skin, but inside he felt an unyielding fire, a determination that justice would prevail. Yet as he gazed into the distance, he couldn't shake an unsettling question. Had they truly uncovered all there was about Ricky Dolan, or did shadows still linger beyond their reach? The thought haunted him, a chilling realization that perhaps some truths might remain buried in darkness, waiting silently for a future reckoning.